Meanwhile, Australia likes to pride itself on taking a tough line against whale hunting, but for all the diplomatic pressure, legal challenges and even the deployment of Navy vessels to the Southern Ocean at one point, the cause has suffered a major setback today. At an International Whaling Commission meeting in Panama, South Korea has announced it intends to join Japan in so-called scientific whaling, although it does go on to say in its statement of reasons that it's actually got more to do with concerns minke whales are reducing fish stocks in the Sea of Japan, known as the East Sea in South Korea. The reaction here in Australia was swift and predictable. Both sides of politics condemned the move. Even the Prime Minister weighed in, saying our ambassador in Seoul will be dispatched to raise concerns at the highest level.
I am very disappointed by this announcement by South Korea. We are completely opposed to whaling. There's no excuse for scientific whaling, and I have instructed our ambassador in South Korea to raise this matter today at the highest levels of the Korean government.
We oppose whaling. We've opposed whaling for a long time. The coalition has consistently opposed whaling in government and in opposition, and we would respectfully say to the South Koreans, don't do it.
Everyone agrees this is a big backward step in the international effort to end whaling. So how did it come to this? Ian Campbell was Environment Minister in the Howard government. He now sits on the board of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Movement. He told Sky News earlier this afternoon the Rudd-Gillard Labor government is partly to blame.
I think that it's a direct result of the fact that the Australian government, post-2007, decided to take this issue off the agenda. I mean, we actually did a deal with Japan to not have votes at the International Whaling Commission meeting in Santiago, in Chile, in, I think it was 2008. That was absurd because Japan used to dread going to the Whaling Commission meeting because Australia and America and England and Germany and France and the South American countries would gang up on Japan, defeat them on the floor of the Whaling Commission and humiliate them internationally and make it really, really ugly from a foreign affairs perspective for them. They didn't like that. And of course Australia put the white flag up.
Well, Captain Paul Watson is the founder, leader and well-known face of Sea Shepherd. He's currently being detained in Frankfurt, Germany for a 45-day stretch, pending a formal decision by Costa Rica on whether he'll be extradited there to face 10-year-old charges over an alleged navigational infringement, a charge he's described as entirely political. Paul Watson joins us live via Skype from Frankfurt now. Thanks for joining us. I'm not going to get into the extradition issue, but I just want to ask you firstly for your reaction to South Korea's announcement that it wants to get into scientific whaling.
Well, I'm sure that Japan had a lot to do with convincing South Korea to make this decision, but they won't be whaling, of course, within the next year. This is something that has not yet been approved, and it'll still take some time. So we're going to be focusing our attentions on Operation Zero Tolerance. That is, we're going to go down to the Southern Ocean, and our objective is to make sure they don't kill a single whale. We're getting a force ship for that purpose, and I'm very confident that we'll be able to make a significant impact again this year.
So that's for this year. Before South Korea implements any of these plans, you'll have a fourth ship now operating in the Southern Ocean. But what about the following year? If South Korea does go ahead with this, will Sea Shepherd deploy vessels in the Sea of Japan?
It's possible. We're looking into the strategically what we can and can't do. But we certainly will be opposing their whaling operations. They're saying it's because there is diminished fish populations, and that's absolutely ridiculous. Fish populations are being diminished because of human overfishing everywhere, and they're just looking for scapegoats, whether it be seals or dolphins or whales or even seabirds. This is a familiar sort of thing. The fact is that Japan is pushing South Korea. Japan would be the market for the whale meat, and the same way they're pushing Iceland and Norway.
So how's it come to this, in your view? I mean, we've seen a lot of pressure, not just from Australia, New Zealand and other countries as well. A legal challenge, which is due to be heard, I think, later this year in the International Court of Justice that Australia's pursued. This has been a big setback. How's it happened?
Well, the legal challenge means nothing. Japan will simply ignore whatever the verdict is, and I'm hoping it'll be over and done with so that Australia will realize just how that's not going to work. The only thing that's going to work is for Australia to send down the Navy to the Southern Ocean, to the Australian Antarctic territory, and kick the Japanese whaling fleet out of that sanctuary. It's called a sanctuary. You do not kill whales in a whale sanctuary. It should be enforced, and Australia has the power to do it.
So you're saying we should be deploying the Navy into the Southern Ocean for this coming season. Would the same apply then? Would that set a template for what happens in South Korea? Should we also be patrolling the Sea of Japan as well?
Well, no, in the Southern Ocean is the Australian Antarctic Territory, so that gives Australia certainly some a reason to be there. In the Sea of Japan, it's a little more complicated. A lot of this is in Korean waters, but it still can be opposed. Of course, the Australian Navy couldn't do that, but Sea Shepherd certainly can and will.
Can you do that? I mean, are there different laws applying here to that Southern Ocean issue?
Well, there's certainly different laws, but, we've tackled the Faroese and Faroese waters, the Norwegians and the Icelanders and their waters, so it's not anything new for us. So we would be able to go into those waters, and it would be confrontational, of course, and very controversial, but we would be willing to do it.
The South Koreans are yet to spell out exactly what they want to do here, but it's understood. We're looking at minke whales being targeted. Tell us about the risk to them.
Well, the minke whales, of course, are the more numerous of the whale species, but that doesn't mean that they're actually numerous. And, the whales are essential for a healthy ecology in our world's oceans. And we've destroyed so many of them. They're down less than 90% of their original populations, pretty much right across the board. And so it just simply is ecological insanity to continue whaling. Whaling has no place in the 21st century. It's an antiquated industry, and it should be, relegated to the dustbin of history.
The Australian government's reaction today has been to tell our ambassador in Seoul to raise this at the highest level. Is that appropriate? Is that enough? What more can Australia do?
Well, Australia, certainly, that's good that they're doing that, but I think that really what we have to do is stop Japan. If we stop Japan, we stop Korea, we stop Iceland, we stop Norway. The Japanese whaling industry is the reason that this is happening. They're the buyers of the whale meat.
Well, the Australian government has always said that it won't return Navy vessels to the Southern Ocean because it only did that to gather evidence for the court case that we spoke about earlier. Isn't there a danger that if you do send Navy vessels down there again, you're only going to inflame the situation?
No, I mean, all the Navy has to do is show up and order. And Australia really should exercise its sovereignty over the Australian Antarctic Territory. That's what it says on the nautical charts, is a dotted line, Australian Antarctic Territory. If this is Australia's territory, it should be defended. The Japanese whaling fleet are in contempt of the Australian federal court right now. That alone should be reason for them to be escorted out of those waters.
And just finally, Paul Watson, for someone who has spent, a great part of their life fighting against whaling, is today one of the biggest setbacks that you have seen?
Well, it hasn't been a setback so far because Korea has not actually been given the go-ahead to go whaling. They say they want to go whaling. But we've been giving the whalers setbacks. They only took 26% of their quota this year, 17% last year, and we're going to make sure that they take even less next year. So we've cost them tens of millions of dollars. I mean, we're winning this war. We're winning it in the field. It's not being won in the courts. It's not being won on the political level, but it is being won in the field, and Sea Shepherd is doing it.
And you'll have a fourth ship you mentioned operating in this coming season. Will that be a similar vessel to those you've had there before?
We're looking for a fast, ice-strengthened vessel, and it will certainly improve. We'll have a fleet, really, basically. And yesterday, Japan released their results of their so-called scientific efforts in the Southern Ocean, and basically what they said was that the whole thing was a failure because of Sea Shepherd's intervention. So that was a good indication that we're really on the right path here.
Captain Paul Watson, thank you very much for joining us live from Frankfurt in Germany.